organization of the body, take 2. Organization of the body. We're going to start looking inside. There's certain names that will always fit with certain things, and that will be very important. So there's some terms here that you'll need to know. The body can be divided into axial, like axis, the axial portion, and the appendicular portion. Axial deals with the main part, head, neck, trunk. So basically it is the middle portion of your body. Appendages, I'm sure you've heard that word before. So appendicular deals with appendages, which would be anything that hangs off of the axial portion. So your appendages are pretty much your arms and your legs. When we get to the skeleton, there's the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton, which will be also your arms and legs. So those terms will be used throughout the year. The axial portion is going to contain several cavities. The cranial cavity is what holds your brain. So if you could grab, or if we could drill inside of your head, basically if we took your brain out, the inside of your head is just a cavity. So you can kind of see, you know, your brain fits inside here. The cranial cavity is what is inside of your skull. Vertebral cavity is going to contain your spinal cord. So that would be inside of your backbone. And same thing there. Where'd you grab me this? There's a little opening or cavity that runs down the center of your vertebrae, and that's where your spinal cord fits. So that would be your vertebral cavity. I do want to point out, when you go to college, professors will pronounce things differently. I say vertebral. Some professors say vertebral. I had professors in the morning that would pronounce things different than the professor in the afternoon. So just to throw that out there, there are some pronunciations that are accepted more than one way. Thoracic cavity then is inside of your chest, and that would house your heart, your lungs, and then the mediastinum is the area in between, basically the heart and the lungs. And then, if you've done some of the labeling already, abdominopelvic cavity is putting 2 things together. Abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity together is the whole thing. It can be broken into the abdominal cavity by itself and the pelvic cavity by itself. So abdominal deals with viscera, which we'll talk about in a second, are all of the organs of your digestive system and your spleen. Your appendix is part of your digestive system. That would be in your abdominal cavity. Pelvic cavity sits a little bit lower, and that houses more of the bottom of your large intestine, along with your bladder and reproductive organs. So abdominal is on top, pelvic is on bottom. A broad, thin muscle, the diaphragm, I'm sure you've heard of that before. It's important with breathing. It is a strong, thick band. It's one muscle that basically separates the thoracic cavity or your chest cavity from your abdominal or abdominal pelvic cavities. And it's really, when we dissect the cats, you'll be able to see, whether you do it on the computer or in class, you'll be able to see that that is a strong muscle that basically just separates. And then it's going to move as you breathe. So here's a picture. This is what your labeling pictures will look like. So cranial houses your brain. Vertebral is going to run all the way up. Your cervical vertebrae reach way up to your head. So the vertebral column is going to start way up here and come all the way down to your tailbone. Here you can see abdominal pelvic puts them both together, where the abdominal actually sits on top, pelvic is on the bottom, and then your diaphragm is this muscle that's going to separate the two. Inside, if I start looking at just your thoracic cavity, pleural, have you heard of pleurisy? Anybody? Okay. Pleural deals with lungs. So pleurisy is going to affect your lungs. It's basically going to be some type of an infection in your lungs. So do notice when you look at diagrams, everything is backwards. When we dissect and look at diagrams of the heart, if I'm standing in front of you, this is my right side, this is my left side. So if I'm looking at a diagram, this is the left side because the body's facing you. If you're writing, to me, this looks like the right. Well, it's opposite. Remember, the person is facing you. So left pleural cavity is going to hold a lung. Right pleural cavity is going to hold a lung. Pericardial, cardio deals with heart. So pericardial cavity is going to hold the heart, and then the mediastinum is just the part that's in the middle. And then you can look at the bottom part of that. There's smaller cavities. Anybody have like sinus headaches? Okay. Those are typically caused by pressure in these smaller sinuses. And a lot of sinus headaches are going to affect you like right here or right here. And the reason that is because that's typically where those cavities or sinuses are actually at. So your mouth is considered a cavity, oral cavity. Your nose, nasal cavity. Orbital deals with eyes. So that's where your eyes are going to fit. And then middle ear cavities, right in here. Middle ear infection, if you have ear infections, that's going to typically occur in those cavities. I think I'll stop there for a little bit.